So, I'm going to talk about a few different things here. I'm not a scientist, not the smartest guy in the room, just somebody that they picked out of a hat. It was available on Sunday morning. So, feel free to challenge me. If you see something up here and you disagree with it, challenge me. I have no problem with that. That's how we learn. As they say, the smartest person in the room is the room. It's everybody together, coming together. So, I didn't stop Dave near the end. I would have loved to ask him a couple questions. I was reading about Austin Matthews, who's a pretty amazing hockey player. And he claims that he changed his shot in 15 hours worth of work. 15 hours. That's it. And he completely changed how he shoots. Darryl Belfry, who is a superstar skills coach, he claims that in 18 reps, he can change an NHL player's form. 18 reps. I know some smart guys wrote a whole book about 10,000 hours. Sound like a pretty good idea to me, right? If you work that hard at something, you're going to get good at it. And now these guys are all saying that's just, that's junk science. That's not true. We can do it faster than that. So, honestly, I don't know who's right? It's probably a mix of somewhere in between. But one thing those NHL guys got, they've got the right climate to work in. It's not how many hours they spend on the ice. It's that intentional practice that when they go out there, this is what I'm going to work on. Obviously, any professional athlete, I'm a huge Brewer fan. I'm crushed that they lost Game 7 last night. But what those guys see and how they swing a bat and how they pitch, it's amazing. And I really should have turned off my screensaver. It's amazing what those guys can do with their body physically. Somebody once said they saw Usain Bolt walking down the street. And I'm not saying I would notice this. I don't think I have the eye for it. But he said, everything was in sync. It was every muscle in his body, from his eyelids to his toes, was in sync. And he goes, he just looked different walking down the street. He goes, he was just walking down the street. He goes, but he looked different. So those guys, they've worked on it. They have a little bit of an advantage, from that skill level, that it's different. But I don't think the climate changes. The better climate that you create when you're teaching kids, they're going to pick up more. So this is going to be a little bit about climate and a lot about leadership. So I say think about climate because maybe the climate you have right now is a hurricane, right? And kids are all just getting in the bunkers, hands over their head. It's lizard brain. It's lizard brain time. It is, I can't hear a word you're saying because I'm just trying to protect myself. I'm not sure what's coming next, but I'm a little scared, so I'm not listening. Okay? It could be everybody's together, or you're on a beach. And on a beach isn't great. Right? Everything can't be hunky-dory all the time. That's not a championship culture. That's not a championship climate. If everybody is just happy, where is that competitiveness? Where is that striving for the win? Striving for the win is part of it. I don't think it's all of it, but striving for the win is part of it. So, there's a lot on here too. What makes a great high-performance environment? There's a lot of stuff. But it's somewhere in the middle. As that pendulum swings, it can't be a Garden of Eden, and it can't be a desert, right? But sometimes things are going to look pretty peachy. Sometimes it's going to be kind of harsh. Got a little video on here that I want to show you. This was a girls basketball coach from Colorado. Had an extremely good team. They were in the state tournament all the time. Couldn't get over the hump to win. Couldn't get over the hump. He was a pretty good coach, had good players showing up, right? Had everything. They couldn't win. Couldn't make it to the state finals. They would lose semifinals, quarterfinals, couldn't make it. Okay? He started thinking about, the climate the kids are in, the culture that's created with this program. And instead of X's and O's, He thought, I've got that down, and I've got good players. Like, I'm going to start looking at the culture. Hopefully, I might have to dim the lights a little bit. So it's tricky. I'm guessing nobody noticed it. So culturally, every time somebody made a mistake, the teammate acknowledged it and said, move past it. Move past it. So every time she lost the ball, lost that turnover, a teammate came over and said something to her. Teammate came over and touched her. So now he swears up and down that in years past, quarterfinals, like they would be in the game, but they would miss pressure shots. They would miss it when it counted. Somebody had to go up to a free throw late in the game. They would lose games late. They were always in the game. They never got blown out. He usually considered his talent better than other teams. Huge turnover. So, he swears up and down that they had missed those shots. Missed those shots. They go on to win like 3 of the next 4 championships. So he says that they miss those shots, right? They make those shots, all of a sudden they start winning. And he said he went up to the one girl and asked her, What'd you feel when you were taking that shot? And she goes, I knew it didn't matter if I made it or missed it. She goes, it didn't matter. She goes, no matter what, my teammates were going to like me. My teammates knew who I was. So it didn't matter if I made or missed that shot. So there was zero pressure when I took that shot. So, I'm a little bit of a cynic. So when he told me this story and then he sent me this video, I thought that's great. But he did tell me that, he was always in the, in the run anyways. And I know when teams start to win, they can feel pretty confident and carry that on for a long time and continue to win. But I was reading a few things earlier this year, and I was just reading Gridiron Genius. I'm almost done with it. And two different books, they talk about how if you watch a team, doesn't matter, professional football, pee wee football, hockey, people who touch each other, after good or bad, are more of a cohesive unit. And they're starting to study that. So I don't know, but it's an interesting thought. But I love the idea of you can acknowledge somebody, and then that whole idea of failure changes. Because that's one of the things we have to work on. We have to reframe how we treat failure and what failure is. Because that's, some people claim that's the number one thing holding athletes back. It doesn't matter if you're playing for a World Cup, you're playing for a World Championship, you're playing for a Stanley Cup. Failure is what holds people back. That fear of failure, that lack of confidence, but a lot of it revolves around that. So, climate. The environment that you create for players is that number one factor in fun and player development. If they don't have fun, they're not coming back. If I've told the story once, I've told it 59 times. I've got a nephew, he's fifth grade, whatever age that is, right? He's a second-year squirt. He is the type of kid, he's got about the right amount of energy. Doesn't have so much energy that he'd drive you nuts, but he's got enough energy and he loves sports. He will sit in his front yard and I can play catch with him with a football for 45 minutes and he's still ready to keep running patterns. Okay, he will kick a soccer ball around. He will do anything. So, last year with hockey, I'm always asking him about hockey, and loves his games. His games are so fun. Practices. He's to start this year, he's not sure if he wanted to play hockey. Just because practices were so boring. That climate's not there. This is a kid who loves to compete, loves to run around, loves to do things. The climate wasn't there. To be honest with you, watching his games, the coach overplayed certain players, at Squirt B, by the way, overplayed certain players. He was one of the kids who got overplayed. So he knew he was going to play a lot. He knew he was going to go out, at the end of the period. He knew his shifts were going to be a minute 15, minute 30 long, and the other line would be 30 seconds. He knew it. So he loved to play. But that climate at practice where he was all the time and where he's really going to get better, that wasn't there. It wasn't there. So I ran across this quote by David Quinn a couple weeks ago, and I'm I got to throw this in there. Coaching can be a very selfish profession because you want to do things to make yourself feel better. But you have to anticipate their reaction to whatever you're going to do. I stood in front of a same group last year, level 3, and I said, if the one thing you can think about is the marquee running across every kid inside their forehead, okay, they got a little marquee and it's running across there all the time. It says, whoever's talking, they read that marquee when they look up, it says, does that person care about me? Does that person care about what I think? Does that person care if I'm here? That's what these kids are thinking all the time. All the time. And so coaching can be a very selfish profession. We've had this discussion once, we've had this discussion a million times. It's coaches that love to win. That coach that overplayed my nephew last year. I didn't ask him why it happened, but was it for a win? If it's for a win, what did that win matter? Was it some kind of acknowledgement for himself? Is that some kind of validation for himself? So sometimes we got to reframe that. The kids are the number one. Caring about them, finding a way to help them. In the end, right? if they have a fantastic season with you, whether it's 500 or 250 or 750 winning percentage, they're going to forget a lot of that. They're going to remember having a fantastic season with you, and the rest of it's going to go by. The other stuff, it's not going to be there. It's not going to last. High school team. So, love doing a senior dinner. It's a senior dinner. It's just the seniors. Okay, we sit down. We talk a little bit of hockey, right? We talk a little bit about, what they're thinking about doing. Their future's coming up really fast, and it's going to, Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. Well, the future's going to do that a little bit to them. So I love to hear their plans because they're idealistic. They're 18 years old. But we also talk a little bit about hockey. And we'll bring up what's your favorite rink to play in, what's your favorite rivalry, what's your favorite team you're on. Like it happens all the time. Like my Squirt C team. My Squirt C team. And they start going on about their Squirt C team and how much fun they had at Squirt. This is an 18-year-old senior. We're sitting around a table eating pizza, and he's telling us about his Squirt C team, and he's got some passion for it because he loved it. Because he loved it. Like David Quinn's talking about NHLers and anticipating how they're going to take his comments, right away. Like it's the same way with Squirts. It's the same way with Pee-wees. It's the same way with Bantams. It's the same way with high school kids. And you can anticipate their reaction, but it's not just 30 seconds from now. It's not 3 minutes from now. It's not 3 hours from now. It might be 13 years from now. It might be 13 years from now. And they're sitting with their high school coach talking about their Squirt C season. Had some kids on our team last year that played rec all the way until Bantams. Great seniors. Like one of the greatest leadership groups had as a high school coach. And like these guys would talk about some of their games playing rec hockey. Like it matters. It matters. The climate you set up, the climate you create matters. It matters for these kids. So, there's only 4 roles in hockey, right? There's only 4 things that happen. Like you play with the puck, you support the puck, okay? You're checking the puck, trying to recover it, or you're supporting that player who's trying to recover the puck. That's all that happens. So, the X's and O's thing can a lot of times be pretty straightforward. But there's infinite number of personalities. So you got to think the person's greater than the player. The person's greater than the player. So when you create this climate, you've got to understand that you've got all kinds of crazy personalities coming in that locker room. That locker room doesn't live in a vacuum. You've got all sorts of crazy personalities coming in there. All different kids coming from different experiences, different homes, everything else. Like, obviously if there's one thing hockey could do, it would be to diversify. And if it ever gets that opportunity and more kids start playing and more kids understand how great this game is and more families do, like there's going to be even more personalities in those locker rooms. So you got to think about what you reward, right? I put this example up there because in Jamaica they reward track. So where are all their fastest athletes going? Right to the track team. In the U.S., like this is the NFL Combine. What does the U.S. value? NFL. The NFL is a huge sport. Okay? I'm only a Packer fan. I'm not really an NFL fan. I cheer for the Packers. I cheer for chaos. That's it. But this is what we value. So where are the fastest athletes going? Going to the NFL. So I only bring this up so you think about what do you value? What do you value? I don't think it's ever a bad thing to have, a little bit of a mission statement. I don't think it's always something that you have to write down, but I think it's something to keep in your head. When you're setting up practices, when you're thinking about how you handle that team, when you're thinking about what you're going to say between periods, when you think about, how you're going to handle all the issues that come up, right? Some kid cross-checking some kid in the back on the ice. Like, how are you going to handle that? Some things happening in the locker room. These are kids. They're always going to push the envelope. That's their job. Their job is to push the envelope and see, hey, what do I need to do in this world to get by? And so they're going to push the envelope. And as adults, we're there to say, nope, stop. That's wrong. So what kind of environment do you want to have? What kind of things do you value as a human? What kind of things, how do you want these kids to act when they're coaching somebody else's kids or your grandkids and they're coaching them? How do you want them to be? There was a great line the other day, right? So coaches are talking about punishing kids for swearing, right? Should you punish kids for swearing? And two coaches are like, yes, we should punish those kids for swearing. One coach is like, okay, when coaches aren't swearing, but if the coaches are swearing, how can you punish them for swearing? So you're always modeling behavior. So, relational coaching. It really means that the person's greater than the player. You care about the kid. You care about those athletes in your room. Okay? And a player knows what to do and can explain why. So if somebody walked in and asked them why they were doing something or what's going on out there, the kid could tell them. That's one of the things that drives me most of the time. Is I know it does not happen 100% of the time. Like not be crazy. Like I coach high school kids, they're older, and if you asked them, hey, what was that about on the ice? They might be like, I'm not sure. Like coach told me to do that. Right? But most of them, I want them to be able to tell you why they did something. Hey, why'd that play happen like that? Well, because this, and this. Why? Because they did this, so I did that. So that, getting those players to be able to explain why. So, keep track of my time. I believe in the big D democracy, small d dictatorship. It is a little bit of a dictatorship, right? Coach is in charge. Can't have the inmates running the asylum, right? The coach has to be in charge. This is another one. I'll use the word deceit. I mean it in a good way. I know it has a negative connotation. And I'll talk about this a little bit later as well. But again, you can always give kids choices. And you can frame it in a way that they'll do what you want to do. Do you want to do this or this? And if you make this one a little bit harder and a little bit more annoying, they're going to pick this. Like you can reframe it and you can create it so they think they have some control. I have it later in a slide. It's about perceived control, right? So really, like you're a little bit of the puppet master. But, so I call that, they do have an opportunity. You do ask them questions. You do try and find out where they're at. So, the leadership pendulum. So this pendulum's swinging back and forth all the time. Swinging back and forth all the time. You cannot be in a stuck position. You cannot be in a stuck position. You can't be like a full-time instructing coach and skip all these other parts. You can't be a super compassionate coach and care about every kid on the team in the best way possible because you're going to forget all these ones. Okay? You got to kind of read the room, read the player, and do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. You have to be able to confront somebody. You have to be able to instruct and teach hockey. You have to be able to hand out some consequences. You have to be able to encourage, and you have to have some compassion. So the pendulum's going to swing. You got to kind of be that. So you need compassion. Okay, it establishes that trust. It establishes that culture of safety. If the kids fear, that stops their growth. It stops it. Stops it dead in its tracks. They need to feel safe enough to try stuff. They need to feel safe enough to get out there and know, I can try to do this. Again, I sat in the stands last year, a different nephew, by the way. I got a few of them. A different nephew, and I go to their games, and I sit in the stands early in the season, and I hear, get it deep, go to work. Get it deep, go to work. Get it deep. Like, those kids didn't handle a puck. Like, that puck was on their stick, it was off their stick. They did not handle a puck. Now, it's February, and I go watch their playoff game, and I'm sitting at Hartmeyer Ice Arena, and what do I hear? Get it deep and go to work. Get it deep and go to work. Like, and I see a team that was, like, I got to admit, they were pretty good at dumping the puck. They had figured that out. Like, I don't know if they practiced it, but I saw cross-corner dumps. I saw chips going down to the top of the circle. So they're a pretty good team at that. They got that down. But it was the same message the whole time. I'm not so sure this was here. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know. Right? But if you go in the locker room and some kid's getting in trouble for trying to make a play, then that culture of safety is not there. That's not there. Right? Like the kids don't get to play the game. They're just doing what they're told. Now, that's the bad puppet. Maybe I should rephrase this whole presentation with good puppet master and bad puppet master. Because that's the bad puppet master. That's the one saying, you do this or you're done. You do this or you're cut. You do this or you don't play. You do this or else. But where is the safety in that so kids can go play? Like I love hockey. Love it. Grew up playing it. I wouldn't still be here if I didn't love it. I grew up close to an outdoor rink. I went skating all the time. I've always had a joy in playing hockey. Maybe I got super lucky with some of the coaches that I had when I was growing up, but I loved playing. I loved playing. I was willing to do the work at practice, but I loved playing. I look at our practices sometimes now and I'm like, oh my gosh, how would I love to be born now? Playing some of these games, skating and doing some of the stuff that we do in practice and competing like that and battling for pucks. Oh, I'd love that instead of just skating up and down the ice all the time. I do kind of remember that. But compassion, accept, empathize, encourage. I can't say enough about empathy. Can't say enough about it. Being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Being able to understand what they think. Being able to understand a little bit of what they feel. Meeting them where they're at. It's their work. Your belief, you believe in them. They need to know you believe in them. They need to know you care about them. Then they'll go to work for you. We've talked about culture a lot with coaches that I've talked to, or when we sit around and talk. How do you measure culture? How at the end of the season can you look at other coaches and talk about culture and say, we had it, we didn't have it? Sometimes I think, if those kids would go through the wall for you, you had the right culture. Because they trusted you. They trusted you. They didn't fear that they were going to get hurt. And they were willing to do whatever you asked. Again, I referenced last year's team because the leadership on it was fantastic. But there was Rich Smith, who you'll see in a little bit. He might reference it too, I don't know. In the middle of the season, we were working on some stuff and just joking. I'm like, okay, do we need to skate today? And kids are they just started going right to the line. Right to the line. And I looked at Rich and I'm like, these kids trust us so much. We probably could have told them to stand on their head in center ice and they would have done it. Because that culture of trust was there. Now part of it, we have a great senior leadership group. And we're going to have to re-establish that because as those kids came through the program and joined early, they believed in us, we believed in them. They knew we cared about them, they cared about us. So if we asked them to do something, they would just go do it. They would just go do it. And they had fun playing. So confront with skill. This is part of the pendulum. You have to be able to confront kids. It can't be, all nicey nice all the time. There's going to be a kid who cross-checks somebody in the back. There's going to be a kid who makes a dangerous play. These are some kids, and some are going to be super aggressive, right? They like to hit people. It's one of the things I love about ice hockey. Okay? When you walk out, or when you skate out, and you go out there, you've got to have some courage to play the game. Because you're going to take a hit. So you got to have that courage. Plus, it's a high skill game. It's got great skill, and you need courage. You need courage to play it. But you need to be able to confront, okay? So you need a purpose. Names and customization. Now, one thing, this is the lizard brain again, right? They're going to really read your body language. For some of us, you need to just practice relaxing. So when you go talk to an athlete, if you're angry, lizard brain is fired up and they've shut you out. The lizard brain is turned on and it's the fight or flight. That amygdala. I like to just call it the lizard brain. It's more entertaining. That's turned on. They've shut you out. So it's got to kind of be a neutral. got to be a neutral look when you talk to them. Girls, like if you don't use names, and I said, hey, somebody in this room parked their car in the wrong spot, okay, girls are going to, he's talking about me. He's talking about me. Boys are going to go, he's talking about that guy. That guy must have parked his car in the wrong spot. That guy must not be back checking. That guy must be doing it wrong. Okay? So names. Names really help. Like, I don't know. Some people disagree. I've never had a problem like in a locker room, especially if you don't do it, you know, you have more of a neutral face, like saying, hey, Joe, like, this is what has to be done here. But it's got to be a little bit neutral. Okay? Facts and feelings. And then consequences versus contempt. Got to be careful there. If they read contempt in it, like, they're going to start to shut you out. And it's going to start to affect the climate. And, you know, with some of these kids, they're together more often than you're with them. So when you start to lose the room, so to speak, right, it means at school they're talking about hockey. They're talking about how something was unfair, or something was wrong, or something didn't work, or something they didn't like. And that can add fuel to the fire. Who knows what's being said at the dinner table? I just won't touch that one because that one's a hard one to beat. Communicating with skill. Like asking kids, repeat it back to me. Repeat it back to me. I'm not good at it yet, but I'm constantly practicing the asking questions. Just always asking questions to get, you know, kids to open up, because that helps me acknowledge their perspective. Joke all the time, like teenagers, dumbest time of their lives, right? The brain is all over the place and they're always making bad decisions. But you got to understand that that's where they're coming from. The other day, I teach 8th grade. The other day, this girl looks at me and she goes, well, what do you do when you're not on your phone? I'm like, what? She goes, what do you do when you're not on your phone? I go, I'm really not on my phone that often. She goes, what? I go, no, I'm not on my phone that often. Usually I leave it in my bag, leave it in the console of my car. I do not carry my phone with me all the time. And she's like, you're kidding me. Like, I laugh because that's just where they're at, right? They're on their phone all the time. They use it all the time. It's an extension of themselves. But we got to recognize that. Just, you know, got to know where they're coming from. Where's the kid coming from when he's on the ice? Why does he love to be on hockey? You know, my older brother was in it, so I do it. You know, I just love to be there. I love to compete. I love to skate. I love this part about it. I love that part about it. Is every kid going to have a great day? There's a great Blake Wheeler quote the other day. They were talking to Blake Wheeler and asking about being a captain. And he goes, you know, I tried to learn from other captains. And he goes, I talked to Nick Lidstrom and I talked to these guys that everybody considered great captains. He goes, the number one thing I learned, he goes, I learned it from Nick Lidstrom. He goes, there's just days where you're not going to feel it. There's going to be days where you're not into it. He goes, especially as the captain, you've got to reframe and feel good about doing it. Feel good about doing that workout. He goes, because there's days you don't want to do that workout. There's days you don't want to do that morning skate. He goes, you got to reframe it and figure out a way to like it. Trick yourself into liking it. And he goes, so that way, every day when I show up, he goes, because they all know I'm the captain, I got to be there and I got to be ready to go and willing and able. He goes, so I've just learned to trick myself. He goes, on those days I don't want to be there. And sometimes as coaches, we got to do that. Because it could be a bad day, could be this, could be that. We've got to trick ourselves so we're happy. We create that climate that's accepting. But we've got to understand that kids aren't good at that. And so when they come in with a bad attitude, we've got to find a way to help them reframe it, help them enjoy being there, help them drop that baggage and come in and skate. They don't know how to do that yet. Especially, I know a lot of people in here, you know, said they were squirt coaches, so especially they don't know how to do that. Be technical and tactical when you speak to them. For a lot of coaches, been around coaches, if I had video of myself doing it back in the early 90s, like, I probably did it myself. Like, I call him the work harder coach. Like, what's the answer? Like, we're losing by 1, we got to work harder. We're losing by 3, we got to work harder. We're winning by 2, and we got to finish this game, we got to work harder. The answer to everything is work harder. Like, if I've heard this one in my playing or coaching life, hustle. You got to hustle out there. You guys got to hustle when you're out there. You go, what's hustle mean? What's work harder mean? Like if you've got 13 kids sitting in that locker room, they've got 13 different definitions of hustle. They've got 13 different definitions of work harder. So what's it mean? Talked to a strength and conditioning guy at Michigan State this summer, and I was bugging him about body language, and I was bugging him about this stuff. And he said, he goes, I've been in college locker rooms. He goes, where the basketball coach walks in and talks about working harder and hustling. And he goes, none of the kids there know what he's talking about. Because they don't know what it means. Am I supposed to rebound more? What am I supposed to do? Like, is it back check? What is it? So be technical. Pick out parts of the game. And if you struggle a little bit as a coach, picking that stuff out, like think about the drills you put into practice. Think about how they work in the game. And then see where that matches up. Because it's easier sometimes to see that in practice and then see it in a game and see where you're missing it, and then you can be a little bit more technical. But be technical and tactical when you communicate. So I threw this one in there. It's my Ned Flanders quote. By the way, my blood type is B positive. Just for these guys who've coached with me before. I try to be positive. The high school depression and suicide rates are climbing. They're climbing. They're going up. Right? All the time. Just keeps moving up. Now, is it probably because of social media and they can compare themselves to everybody else on the planet? And so now they know that they're inadequate because they're looking on Instagram? And so they know they're inadequate, so they start to convince themselves they're inadequate. This is going up. Okay, so as youth coaches, positive priming, okay, it's proven it improves health, it improves performance. Kids are 50% faster and more accurate. Internists get 20% faster. Retention, test score, grades all increase. So be positive. Prime it. Before they do drills. Hey, I saw this in the last game. I saw the way you guys skated. This is going to work great. Hey, I know you guys can handle this. This is going to happen. Like, be positive. Prime them. Prime the pump. Okay? Yes, I'm super old. I had cars with carburetors in them. Okay? And you could, pour some gasoline in the carburetor and prime it and get it started. This is the same thing, right? Prime this. Positive priming. I almost went to tap the screen. Optimism versus pessimism. I try to be as optimistic as possible, but we're terrible. Hey, sometimes the puck hits the post. Okay? All this gambling's legal now. Now that they've passed the new laws and you can gamble like crazy. But Las Vegas has always struggled with hockey. Las Vegas has always struggled with hockey. Hockey is the most random game. That's why Las Vegas has always struggled. Their bookies have always, so they of course try to decrease their margin of error because the house has got to win. Okay, the house has got to win. But when they set the odds, these guys, the bookmakers have the hardest time with the NHL because it's the most random game that are in their books, in their sport books. Okay? And once I learned that, I use that. I use that so kids understand that the game is random. There are games where you're going to play fantastic and you're going to hit the post or the puck's going to hit the goalie in the head, or the goalie's going to make a great save or it's going to hit somebody in the shin pad. The Wild one the other night. Suter throws the puck out of the corner and hits the guy in the skate and goes in the net for a 2-1 lead. And then they score an empty netter to win 3-1. Oh yeah, he had that planned. Ryan Suter's a great player, but goal scorer, not so sure. But he throws it out in front of the net from the corner. He was doing everything right though. Joined the rush, jumped in, went down the corner, got the puck. Throws the puck to the middle and hits the opponent in the skate and goes to the net. Chance happens. Versus, we're terrible. We're terrible is a permanent thing. The refs against us. Refs are against us. Refs are terrible. Refs are brutal. If there's one thing I could wish on hockey coaches, we would just shut up about refs and just deal with it and live with it and understand that a lot of the officials are working through some of the same things we're working through. It's a super fast game. It can be hard to see sometimes. if we'd all taught those guys how to skate better as hockey players, they'd all be better skating as refs. So don't pick on their skating, right? But every time we pick on them, it gives every player on that bench and every fan that can hear you an excuse. Gives them an out. Gives them an out. I'd rather not have that out, and we just worry about ourselves and we work a little bit harder at the next practice, work a little bit smarter at the next practice. But Major League Baseball's doing a study, and Japanese baseball is doing a study about optimism or pessimism. I'm not going to bore you, and I didn't put all the stats on here. It's amazing. It's like a difference of almost 150 percentage points winning rates with optimistic coaches and optimistic teams. The Japanese Professional League has a huge study going on right now, and it's all about how the optimistic teams perform better. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the Brewers are super optimistic and they talk about it all winter long and come out fantastic next year. Take responsibility. Like I think one of the most powerful phrases in coaching is, what you see is what you coach. Right? If you've got a whole bunch of whiners in the locker room, maybe that's your climate. Maybe that's what you've established. You won't be the first coach that had a group of kids that were tough to bring together and you had a bunch of dinner table coaching. Maybe it requires something different this year. Maybe this year you've got a great group of kids that are fantastic. They're awesome. You've got a great group of kids and everything's going to work great and everything you throw at the wall works. Here's the issue, right? Here's the issue. You'll have great culture when you have great kids. You'll have bad culture when you have bad kids. Whose fault is it? I know a lot of coaches that'll be like, it's the kids. You've got your leaders in your room. Okay, they're in your room, whether you like it or not. Sometimes you got to do a little bit more. Okay, sometimes you got to circle up and have the kids kumbaya and like, hey, say something good about each other. Start to recognize that there's goodness in your teammates. Sometimes you don't need to do much, right? You've got a great group of kids and it's going to work and they're going to have a great locker room. But you've got to establish that climate. You can't just say, okay, like I got what I got and I'll just have to deal with it and it's going to be a struggle all year long. I know a coach, like it's every other year for him. As he's coaching with his kids, he goes up, it's every other year. So when his kid next year will be with the wrong mix, but he worked super hard last year, like at helping the kids understand that there's something good about everybody and that everybody can help, and trying to create a safe culture. Try and create a culture where failure isn't a bad thing. Okay, that's how we learn. We'll talk about that after lunch, I think. But instill confidence. I think it's almost time anyways. Instill confidence. I think that's a huge part. That's part of the fear thing. That's part of removing fear and letting them play. I'm a big shame person ever since I read Brene Brown's books. She just studies shame for a living. Like that's what she does. She studies shame. Most of it is aimed at female, probably 60% aimed at females, 40% at males. But she thinks that's one of the things that holds just humans back all the time. Shame and how we feel shame. Mistakes are part of the game. Pros make mistakes. Like, right? We could put up NHL clips right here and pick them apart. We could pick them apart, up one side and down the other. We could put up a squirt game and pick it apart. Mistakes happen. Again, the kids got to know this. Like, going to make a mistake. You're going to get another chance. You're going to get another chance. Like one mistake and life isn't over. You're going to get another chance. I love this focus. This is from Jimmy Johnson, by the way. Way back when he won with the Cowboys, he had to cash in really quick and write a book. He talked about how he has guys walk the plank. So they walk across that, right? And everybody can do it. Everybody can do it. And then he says, so if I put this between two buildings, 50 feet, 500 feet in the air, how many of you would walk across the plank? Most people are like, I'm not walking across that plank up there. And he goes, it's because your focus is on, not on the plank, it's on falling. It's on that failure. Okay, so knowing why, helping out, building trust. I like this story. So the guy was out at Niagara, right? And he does the big show walking the wire, and he walks across the tightrope, and comes back and walks back and talks to all the people watching him. And they're all like, he asks them questions about whether or not he would fall. And they're all like, oh, no, you've done this 100 times. You're so good at it. You're not going to fall. Like, you could walk back and forth. Like, we're never going to see you fall. So he goes, oh, like, that's good that you guys believe in me this much. And he pulls out his wheelbarrow, and he goes, so who wants to get in? Of course, nobody wants to get in. He goes, well, wait. You said I don't ever fall, and you trust me that I could make it back and forth across this wire 50 times. Who wants to get in the wheelbarrow? So there's no trust there. There's no trust. They're not going to get in the wheelbarrow. Are the kids on your team going to get in your wheelbarrow? Are they going to they trust you enough that when you ask them to do things on the ice, you ask them to do things in the locker room, are they going to get in your wheelbarrow and walk across that wire with you? Like, I think that's... Okay. I was listening to a podcast. This is from a football guy, but I liked it so much I had to put it on there. Now, I know there was a lot of squirt hands going up in here, and I don't know when kids get phones nowadays, but I know by 8th grade everybody's got a phone. But hockey practice might be the only hour that kid doesn't have the phone in their hand. I know in high school, right? Like, if they're on a date, they got their phone in their hand. Right? They walk into the rink with their phone in their hand. Now, I know you got to be careful driving. I'm pretty confident they all have their phones in their hands when they're driving too. So be careful out there. But make the most of it. You're going to get an hour with these kids when they don't have the phone in their hand? Like, make something happen. Make the most of it. Establish that climate. Establish that climate. What do we have, about 5 after? 3 after. So, how about quarter after? Sound good? Excellent. Thank you very much. We had a few more. And I didn't force you guys to watch the USA Hockey Safety video. I put that at the very end because I figured I'd run late. It's boring, and I don't think anybody wanted to watch it anyways.